right, hell, let's do this thing. Hey, we're doing Daily Dieter again. Why the hell not? Thanks for everybody who is tuning in. We're going to talk Warriors. We're going to talk some 49ers. Let's start with Warriors as we get sort of the comprehensive deal with the Niners. Everybody is doing something safe for the 49ers. Kind of expected, but there's a lot of stuff to go over. I'll go over it with Jake Hutchinson a little bit later on. 49ers game day. If you're not subscribed, do that. Fix that problem right now. But right now it's just me, and we're going to talk a bit of Dubs, and we're going to talk about Andrew Wiggins because on Saturday, Andrew Wiggins had a real bad game on Saturday, man, and it wasn't his fault that they lost exclusively. It wasn't his fault. Everyone can wear that one a little bit, but against a Spurs team that was one of the worst teams in the NBA and didn't have their top two players, an unacceptable performance by the Warriors. Luckily for them, they get another shot at it. Not that they should need another shot at the San Antonio Spurs, but here we are. And I think for Wiggins, this is the biggest game of the year. We don't know how long Steph Curry is going to be out. Warriors are going to reevaluate him on Tuesday. That means he might miss a couple more games. It means he might be back come Tuesday evening. Like the severity of the ankle injury has been downplayed significantly day by day since he twisted that thing. I mean, I felt it in my ankle when he twisted that thing. It looked brutal. Thank goodness for those ridiculous moon boots that he wears on the court. Otherwise, we'd be looking at the end of the Warriors season. But this is a pretty perilous time for Golden State, and they didn't get off to anything close to an auspicious start in the non-Steph Curry portion of this campaign. And Wiggins had 11 points. He was a non-factor. He was persona non grata. And obviously, that's the trend for this season. And what makes it most frustrating isn't that it was another no-show Andrew Wiggins game on Saturday. It was that in a game where the Warriors really needed Andrew Wiggins, the Warriors really needed a player of his talent and a player who was the second best player on a championship team less than 24 months ago. They needed him to step up, and he didn't even come close to doing that. He was the Andrew Wiggins that we had seen all year, and the frustrating part is that before he left for 4 days, and we don't know, or 4 games, we don't know why. You can infer what you will. The Warriors aren't given details. Wiggins won't give details. This is a dude who disappeared in the latter part of last season, just took the Warriors unlimited paid time off and really pushed it to the limit. Did it a little bit again this go around. Before that happened, and you hope everything's okay. I mean, even if some of the rumors are true, that's brutal stuff. I'm not going to get into that too much because I know as little now as I knew then. And I thought I knew something, and you think it's just ridiculous. Regardless, he was starting to come along a little bit before he left again. And it was starting to get encouraging, and the Warriors were playing really good basketball. Let's just go over the 4 games prior to his exit. 19 points, 20 points, 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting, so a very efficient game. And then 14 points against the Denver Nuggets on the 25th of February in that loss. But 29 minutes, 28 minutes, 28 minutes, they were efficient. They were cohesive. I thought the defense was really good. It looked like he was finding his game. And that's something that Steve Kerr had been saying time and time again throughout the season. We think Andrew's right around the corner. We think he's going to break through. We think this is going to be his moment. And you could make the argument that with that little stretch there at the end of February, that he was having his moment, that he was coming through, and that he was showing the potential of being the second best player on this team. And this has been the biggest issue for the Warriors all season long. They don't have a number 2. They don't. I love Jonathan Kuminga. He is a joy to watch. That game against the Spurs on Saturday night showed you that he's not a number 2 yet. He probably will be a number 2 at some point. You can only hope that's next year for the sake of Steph Curry. But he's not a number 2 because when the Warriors really needed him to step up with Andrew Wiggins stepping down, and he didn't come through in the big moments of the game. He came through in a fourth quarter, a lot of which was garbage time. And I'm not knocking Kuminga. He's 21 years old. This is expected. Everyone wants to immediately jump to the end point where Jonathan Kuminga is an NBA All-Star. And I think he will get there. Not that he can. I think he will get there. I think he's that talented, and I think he's proven that this season. But the notion that he is ready to be a number 2 for a team that's going to make hay in the playoffs today, hell no. Hell no. He can show up every now and again and be that guy. He can be your number 2 some nights. He can be your number 2 on a night where Curry is thermonuclear and everything's working. But he's not your number 2 today. He's a tertiary option. Klay Thompson had a big game on Saturday. He was the only offense for 3 quarters. But Klay's not a number 2. He hasn't been a number 2 for a minute, and he's certainly not a number 2 today. And he had one of his best games, and it sucks that it came in a losing effort because you want to use those on the really good days. But they needed everything Klay Thompson had, and it still wasn't enough. He just isn't a number 2. He's a tertiary option. The Warriors have a lot of 3s. The Warriors have a lot of 4s. The Warriors have good depth. Between 3 and 7, they're loaded. Their issue is they don't have a number 2. And you don't have Steph Curry. You don't have a number 2. You lose to the Spurs on a Saturday night at Chase Center, which is, let's just call it again what it was, unacceptable. It's not like Victor Wembanyama was blocking 10 shots and dunking 10 times. He wasn't there. He wasn't playing. It's not like Devin Vassell was giving you buckets. He wasn't there. He wasn't playing. And Steve Kerr has to wear this because the rotations were all out of whack. Chris Paul has to wear this because he was asked to step up into the role and he couldn't pull it off. Like, a lot of guys have to wear this. Don't get me wrong. But Andrew Wiggins was the X factor in this game. He needed to be a number 2. And maybe just having a number 2 for one night against the Spurs on a Saturday at Chase Center would have been enough to beat them. Maybe not. But I would have loved to have found out if it was. And he was nowhere close to that. If Klay Thompson's a number 3 on this team, I think that's fair. I think that's he's a tertiary option. If Jonathan Kuminga's a tertiary option, and Steph Curry's obviously a 1, he's a king tide, and he lifts all ships with him, making Jonathan Kuminga look like a 2 some nights, making Klay Thompson look like a 2 some nights, making Brandon Pajemski look like a 2 some nights. He's that good. But when he's not there to lift everybody up, where's Andrew Wiggins fit in? Is he a 4th option? Is he a 5th option? Now, maybe his contract says that he should be, but this was the second best player on a title team less than 2 years ago, and he gives you 11 points against a San Antonio Spurs team that does not know how to win. And frankly, if it happens again, and I don't want to do big ultimatums here because there are still 19 games left in the season and all, but if he can't step up tonight in San Antonio and give you 20, I don't even need it to be efficient. Just be an offensive force. Just be a force anywhere. If he can't do that tonight, I got to wonder if it's in him anymore. I got to wonder if he has the ability to get to that level anymore, or if we have seen the best basketball that Andrew Wiggins will ever play, not just for the Warriors, in his entire career. And if that's the case, well, the Warriors are trying to get under that luxury tax line, and I know trades are real hard in the modern NBA with luxury tax teams and all that, but whew. If Andrew Wiggins can't do it against the Spurs tonight, I have no reason to believe that he can do it any other night for any other reason. With the ultimatum that I know Steve Kerr has put on, that the coach, that Draymond Green's put on him, that everybody's put on him, with the way that they are looking at Andrew Wiggins right now, the way that we're talking about Andrew Wiggins right now, you're going to go to San Antonio and you're going to play one of the worst teams in the NBA. And yes, Victor Wembanyama will play tonight. I don't know about Vassell. I haven't looked at the injury report yet. But if he can't give you force, if he can't play like a guy who is stepping up to the occasion on an unmitigated opportunity to step up to the occasion, if he can't do that, you got to question if he ever will, and you got to question where he fits with this team moving forward. The Warriors are fine. I mean, they're fine. If you were expecting more from them, if you were expecting them to continue that push that they were making to get out of the play-in tournament, even when Steph Curry comes back, I'm finding it very hard to believe that they get out of that 9-10 game with the Lakers, if for no other reason than Adam Silver really, really wants that 9-10 game with the Lakers. But Tim Kawakami brought up a great point on social media the other day, and he often does that. We should give Tim Kawakami his flowers here. But brought up a great point, and he's been all over this since day one. The Warriors' financial system, the way they pay the mortgage at Chase Center, which they built the house. But they got to pay the builders now. They got a mortgage on that bad boy. It's not paid off yet. The way that they do that is playoff home game revenue. Because each one of those games, they're just cashing $5 million, $10 million checks. That's how they get to a clean bill, a clean title on Chase Center. And they're making money hand over fist. I'm not worried about the financial state of the Golden State Warriors, anything like that. But they are looking down the pipe right now at the real possibility, as Tim pointed out, they have no home playoff games. Not even one. Not even one play-in tournament game against the LA Lakers at Chase Center. They're looking down the pipe at that. And that is a very real concern if you're wondering about the long-term trajectory of this team. If you're looking at the fiscal ramifications of that, the Warriors have to get under the luxury tax line, probably both aprons, 2 of the next 4 years. The way the new CBA was built, it is impossible to function as a winning basketball team unless you get out of the repeater tax. So 2 out of the next 4 years, they got to get under. And they can do it. They can pull that off. It's going to take some finagling. It's going to take a little bit of guile. It's going to take some clever moves. But they can pull it off. I think right now, if Gary Payton II opts in, which I would imagine he would, given how little he's played this year with injuries and stuff, it's about a $9 million contract. I would imagine that Gary Payton II would opt in. That's going to be about $11 million over the tax line. Okay, so you got something there. Now that's without Chris Paul, and that's without Klay Thompson on the books. Now, if Klay Thompson wants to come back, he's going to have to take a pretty significant discount. He's making like $45 million. I think $25 million would be the absolute upper echelon of what he could get from the Warriors. So now add that on, and now you're into a second apron. I think Chris Paul, unless he does something truly spectacular, like unquestionably brilliant over the next 19 games, is gone. And it's not to say that he hasn't been a good steward of the role, but you can't be paying $30 million to a backup point guard. And Chris Paul, at least on Saturday, showed to me that he's definitely not a starting point guard. So I think you move on from Chris Paul. You take the savings there. It's one of the reasons they made the trade with Jordan Poole and Chris Paul, which somehow has worked out wildly well, even though I'm not sure Chris Paul has worked out wildly well. They get the tax savings. They get the money savings with getting rid of Chris Paul at the end of the season. But then what do you have? You have a team that's $30 million over the tax line. If you're lucky and Klay takes as little as he can. And by the way, I'm not sure Klay has really a big market. If he wants to go test it out, I'm not sure anyone's coming in with a $25 million offer besides the Golden State Warriors, who obviously have the ability to keep him at whatever price they want, given that he's been with the team forever. He's got the bird rights, all that jazz. I mean, if he wants to go play for the Detroit Pistons for $35 million a year, he's welcome to. I don't think that's in anyone's best interests. So you move on from Chris Paul. You have Klay Thompson signed on a friendly deal. I think that's fair. You're going to sign a bunch of dudes on the minimum. That's just what you have to do. And the Warriors have done actually a pretty good job of that, all things considered. You have your young guys. You have Curry. You have Draymond under contract, all that. But you're still over. You're still well over. Now, again, this is very, very easy back. I mean, this isn't even back of the napkin math. This is loose. I'm not Mike Dunleavy. I'm not a cap guru here, but I'm looking at a team that might be about an Andrew Wiggins over the luxury tax line next year. Seems to me as if Andrew Wiggins can't show that he has the potential even to be a number 2 on a winning team again. And by the way, they're not a winning team. I mean, they are above 500, but they're paying an NBA record in payroll for a team that might not even get a home game in the play-in tournament. Why wouldn't you just dump Wiggins? Easier said than done by $1 million, by about $40 million, because of the way that the new CBA does it, and you can't tax and it's blah, blah, blah. But Andrew Wiggins, I think, is playing for his Warriors career while Steph Curry is out. And obviously, for the Warriors' sake, you hope that is as short as possible in terms of the timeline. But man, I just keep coming back. 11 points. 5 of 12 shooting. Hey, he got up 12 shots, had 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 of 3 from beyond the arc, and I just felt no force. No force. The players that I like to watch, the players that I feel fit with the Warrior system best, are the players where I don't even need to look at the box score. They're the players that you just feel like they fit. Steve Kerr would call them connectors. A Brandon Pajemski every night, I don't need to look at his box score. Now, it wasn't very good on Saturday. We got to be fair about that. He didn't have a good game. But Did he do positive things? Hell yeah. He's taking charges. He's making the right pass. He's driving to the lane. He's getting to the free throw line. Kuminga, when he's on, I don't need to see the box score. I don't need to see how many points he had because you felt him. You understood his role in the game. You felt him. The end result is usually positive if Jonathan Kuminga makes his presence known. The end result is usually positive if Draymond Green makes his presence known. If Klay Thompson has a big game, save for Saturday, you usually see it in the Warriors' final score, and that's usually a win. It's been too infrequent, but it's usually a win. Even if he's just making himself known on the defensive side of the floor, it reflects in the final score in a positive way. I don't think Andrew Wiggins reflects in the Warriors' scores at all. I couldn't have told you, having watched that game, that Wiggins had 11 points on Saturday. Couldn't have told you. I could have guessed 2. I could have guessed 20. He didn't have any force. He wasn't playing as if he was the fulcrum of the Warriors' attack in that contest. And I know that the offensive system is strength in numbers and move the ball, this and that. There's a lot of possessions against the Spurs. There's a lot of possessions in general, even when Steph's around, where you get your first and your second action are blown up. This is when you have to have a dynamite wing who can just take the ball, rise, and fire. Warriors fans know this better than anybody. Hey, there's 8 seconds left on the shot clock. You should give the ball to Kevin Durant because he's going to get up a very high-quality shot. Even if he's 22 feet from the basket, right inside the three-point line, it's a high-quality shot because you can't block him. Okay, so you had the absolute peak of that power, and then Wiggins did a lot of that in the 2022 playoffs. A lot of the stuff was inside the offense, yes, and it was beautiful, and it was fantastic, and his defense was spectacular. But there was also a lot of possessions where at the end of the shot clock, Wiggins, square a guy up, put the ball on the floor once or twice, rise and fire. We need to get a decent shot off at the end of this wasted possession, and he'll steal you 2 points. Or he'll drive to the basket, heaven forbid he would ever do that, and he can get you to the line. And he can let your defense set up even if he misses a free throw. Kuminga can do that latter part. Jonathan Kuminga does want to square up, take the shot, last seconds of the shot clock, play actual wing basketball. But he's getting a lot smarter because he knows that that's not really an efficient way to play the game right now. It will come. It will come. I'm not sure he'll ever be a lights-out shooter. I'm not sure he'll ever be an A-graded guy in that regard, but it will come. He can be Pascal Siakam. No question about it in my mind. In fact, I think he'll be better than Pascal Siakam when it's all said and done. But right now, he's playing smart basketball, which is drive my shoulder down. I'm bigger, stronger, and more athletic than all these dudes. I'm going to get to the line. You know who else did that? 2022 Andrew Wiggins. Just said, hey, man, I'm bigger, stronger, faster, and more athletic than anybody who's guarding me. I'm going to go make something happen. Even in the NBA Finals, when he was the third best wing on the floor, depending on how you felt about Jaylen Brown in that series, depending on how you felt about Jason Tatum in that series, he was the guy. He was a guy who took matters into his own hands. I love what I'm seeing from Kuminga. I like that Klay Thompson is going to have his bursts every now and again. It's better than nothing, which is kind of what you were getting for a stretch. At some point, though, we need something from Andrew Wiggins if we're going to expect these Warriors to do anything, and especially with you need Andrew Wiggins to step up because there's just not enough offense. There's just not enough offense unless Andrew Wiggins is a 20-point per game scorer or somewhere in that vicinity. And again, I don't even give a shit about the box score. What I care about is the man is playing with force. It has to happen tonight. It has to happen tonight in San Antonio. Otherwise, I mean, it's going to be very hard to not just write the dude off entirely. You guys want to talk some 49ers? Thanks for everybody joining in. You can subscribe to the channel or not. Honestly, I'm not going to pressure you on it. A lot of people are like, you got to subscribe. You got to click the bell. Do whatever the hell you want. This is a free country, damn it. Okay. 49ers, as far as, maybe in the last 20 minutes something happened here, but yeah. Not making moves as far as I can tell. Okay, so let's get caught up in some of the more recent stuff here. The Niners cut Eric Armstead yesterday. Now, technically, he's not cut until June 1st, as to save some money on the cap. I have no problem with that move in a vacuum. Because Eric Armstead's coming. He's got the foot stuff. If I've learned one thing, Bill Walton once told me, because I'm a big man. I'm wide, and I'm tall, and probably pretty deep, too. I'm getting better at the deep part. Listen, You can only eat so many carbs in your life, and I probably hit my quota. Regardless, Bill Walton once told me if you're a big man, when your feet go, it all goes, which Bill Walton knows pretty damn well from his career. It was a great piece of advice, big man to big man. Now, Bill Walton's a lot bigger than me and a lot more successful than me. Regardless, it is stuck in my mind forever, and I think it applies to all sports. It's why I'm literally rolling out my feet with a golf ball right now. Like I'm like habitual about it. Because me and Eric Armstead, we're the same goddamn size. Now, he's a lot stronger and a lot more talented than I am, probably by a factor of 1,000,000. Regardless, big men have to have their feet. We're like horses, you know? They shoot the horse when they break a leg. There's too much weight up top to ever get them back. It's a big issue. That's a big issue. And now you add in a meniscus injury that he was dealing with that he's going to have surgery for. I can see why the 49ers came in and say, buddy, you got to take a pay cut. Buddy, you got to pull back some of this money. We got void years out the wazoo with you. We probably overpaid you when we signed you to the contract because we thought you'd be a defensive end. Now we need you to be a defensive tackle. I don't know if you're that good at being a defensive tackle, especially the way that we needed you to play defensive tackle. Regardless, I don't have a problem with them cutting Eric Armstead with the post-June 1 designation because, yeah, he'll be on the books a little bit, but I'm not sure he was going to be a player who could help the 49ers win this year. And going down the line, a lot of question marks if he was going to help. But then you look at the depth chart, and there's some real issues on the defensive line. There's some real issues when you think about the depth that they have or the lack thereof on defense. Let's just go over the defensive tackle rotation as it stands right now for the San Francisco 49ers. It's Javon Hargrave, who for the first 10 weeks I thought was awesome. I guess 8. And then he pulled his hamstring, and he was not great for the second half of the season. You could make an argument that the Javon Hargrave signing was a bad one. I like to look on the upside of it, mainly because there's no other reason. I can't believe I'm being an optimist, but there's no reason to not hope that Javon Hargrave can get back to the level that I thought he played at, which was a high level early in the season. I thought he played a really good game in the Super Bowl as well. So you give him a little bit of rest. The hamstrings got right. I think he can be an impact player. Kind of has to be, especially now. You got Javon Hargrave. You got Kalia Davis. Does anyone really know anything about Kalia Davis? I mean, listen, I've seen him play. I think he's fine. The Niners wanted to get him in there a bunch. He didn't do anything to impress me one way or another, and he didn't really have enough snaps to feel like you can trust that guy to be your starting defensive tackle in a 4-man front next year. But by the way, that's the only guy that you could reasonably slide in to replace Eric Armstead on the roster right now because they have 5 defensive tackles. And I'm not going to lie to you, 2 of them, I don't know who they are. T.Y. McGill is still on this team. That's cool. Ernest Brown and Spencer Wage. Anyone know anything about former Ram Ernest Brown? Anyone know is Spencer Wage even a real player? Sorry to the Wage family, but sorry, I don't know you, buddy. I don't know you, buddy. And this is a team that's contending for the Super Bowl. I'd like to at least know who you are. I know Ernest Brown a little bit, but that's only because I'm a dork. I'm cutting deep with Ernest Brown, who had I think 2 sacks for the Rams last year. T.Y. McGill, Kalia Davis, and then Hargrave, who you can't really trust to get through a whole season, at least if you're looking at the first season that he played with the 49ers. That's your defensive tackle room. They're going to have to spend some money there. And honestly, I think it's as much as I believe the salary cap is fake and the Niners can do whatever the hell they want in free agency. If you are hoping for Danielle Hunter or anybody who's kind of a big name, big money player, $15 to $20 million option at defensive tackle or defensive end, I think that has to go out the door because you need to spend about $5 million on 6 guys. Because let's just go through defensive end. You got Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa's awesome. And then you have Drake Jackson. I like Drake Jackson as a guy. I think he has had flashes, and that is a stretch to call it a flash. But Drake Jackson is your number 2 defensive end on this team. Then you have Alex Barrett, who's just sort of around all the time. Raymond Johnson III. Anyone know anything about Raymond Johnson III? I'm going to plead ignorance on this one. Robert Beal, guy they drafted out of Georgia. They tried to get him in a little bit last year. I kind of like Robert Beal. I think Robert Beal might be a nice little depth guy. I think he's a solid enough prospect. Austin Bryant. Some people like Austin Bryant. Some people don't. I don't think it's ever going to be a real bone of contention with anybody because I don't think Austin Bryant is going to be a serious player in the NFL. I think he's a guy who's probably practice squad, who gets called up every now and again when you need an extra defensive end. And then I'm not even going to try to. Okay, I'll try. Sam, you see, somebody named Dieter Kurtenbach should really try harder on this stuff. Okunwahu? Sam Okunwahu. Let's go with that. I don't know Sam Okunwahu, or however you pronounce it. And I'm not feeling very comfortable with the 49ers defensive end depth either. So, yes, Danielle Hunter and others of his ilk would be fantastic. I don't think they can afford to spend big money on one player on the defensive end because the defensive line needs so much help. So much help. Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, and then a whole bunch of wild cards to the point where Robert Beal and Kalia Davis are starting to look good. We got a problem here, folks. We got a problem here because not only is this crazy week, just generally weak, this is also the fulcrum of the defense. I know Nick Sorensen's coming in as the defensive coordinator. He's a secondary guy. The Niners secondary was really good last year, save for maybe an Ambry Thomas. There were a lot of positives to be gleaned from the secondary last year. And Steve Wilks deserves a lot of scoring, and I have provided plenty of it. But he did a nice job with the secondary, right? So you have Jair Brown, a guy that Steve Wilks literally banged the table for. Jair Brown's going to be your starting free safety. Talanoa Hufanga is going to be your starting strong safety. They're going back to a cover 3, which means that Hufanga actually stands a chance of being an impact player. So you get that. You got Ward on one side. You got Lenore either in the slot or out wide. So you need to add another corner. Probably need to add a depth linebacker or 2 because I don't think you can trust Dre Greenlaw to be coming back anytime soon. Not off an Achilles injury that happened in February. Sorry, I love Dre Greenlaw. I think he is the most fun player to watch on the 49ers defense, bar none. He's a tone setter. He's a game changer. He's a really positive impact player. He just tore his Achilles. I don't know if he'll ever be that guy again, and I certainly know he won't be that guy for week 1 of the season. So you need a starting will linebacker, even if it's just for a short period of time, to play next to Fred Warner, who, by the way, I guess has to do it all now. They restructured his contract today, reportedly. Makes sense to me. Fred Warner's not going anywhere, and you needed to restructure some contracts to create some salary cap room. But, I'm looking at it, and I am deeply wondering how the 49ers can afford to go out and get a big-time defensive end opposite Nick Bosa, because we just saw a guy like Bryce Huff of the Jets, who I had as a number 2, number 3 option if you're listing out your DE targets. I had Bryce Huff, who doesn't really set an edge, but could get after the quarterback a little bit. No question about it. I mean, he just signed with the Eagles for 3 years and $51 million. That's for Bryce Huff. Again, nice player. I didn't think he was a $15 million player, and he just got 3 years, 51. I know NFL contracts are fake and all that, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for Bryce Huff. So Danielle Hunter is probably a $20 million a year player. And I know that the 49ers can afford to sign a $20 million a year player. And I can see the benefit of having a Danielle Hunter on the other side. But if you get Danielle Hunter opposite Nick Bosa, okay, now your defensive end room's looking a lot better. You bring back Cleve Farrell on something cheap. You add a couple of guys who you feel like might fit your system. You put more on Beal's shoulders. That doesn't do a damn thing to help you at defensive tackle, though. And you need all the help you can get at defensive tackle right now with Eric Armstead out. And by the way, even if Eric Armstead was retained, this would probably still be the case. You would probably still need to bring in multiple defensive tackles to just have bodies, NFL caliber bodies at that position. And as much as the secondary is the new thing, and listen, I'm very bullish on how the 49ers have handled their secondary, and I think that they can make strides again this upcoming season. This defense, especially if they're going back to a strong cover 3, which I have questions about, needs to have juice up front. And right now it is borderline juiceless. This is a bad front 4, even with Nick Bosa, even with Javon Hargrave. I think it's a real issue. So let's talk about some DT targets. And again, we'll go over all this with Jake Hutchinson of 95.7 The Game on the 49ers Game Day podcast. We're going to do something at about 2:30. Daquan Jones, I think, would be a really nice fit at DT. I thought he was a dominant player when he played for the Bills this past season, but he's got injury stuff. And I'm not sure Daquan Jones is going to be getting any sort of big offers. By the way, if anything happens during this, please let me know. Please let me know if guys are signing. I see Charlie Warner. Oh, man, Jake Hutchinson already texted me some stuff. Charlie Warner got $12 million for 3 years in Atlanta. So now the 49ers also have no tight ends other than George Kittle, which might be a positive, all things considered. I wouldn't have signed Charlie Warner to that deal. But if you're looking for guys that they need to draft, start at the tight end position. Maybe start with my man Tip Riemann out of Illinois. Regardless, Daquan Jones, a defensive tackle, I think would be a nice option as a pillow contract. How about DJ Reader of the Cincinnati Bengals? A big boy. DJ Reader's a big boy. He is a run stopper extraordinaire. Could be a two-gap guy even. You got Brandon Staley coming in, helping out the defense. Maybe they start going to a little bit of a three-man front. Maybe they start using a jack linebacker on the edge. I don't think they will. But having a guy like DJ Reader allows you to. And it certainly would plug up the middle in a way that needs to be plugged up. Now, DJ Jones is another option. If we're just looking at DJs, DJ Jones is another option. DJ Jones is not the same player he was when he left the 49ers. He'd been kind of dog shit for the past year and a half in Denver. I went back and watched some of the tape. He was just getting pushed around. And this was always going to be a concern. When he loses that burst, it's very similar to Hargrave. When he loses that burst, he's not big enough or strong enough to really do much. Like when you're thinking about a run stopper, you're thinking about, I know a lot of 3-4 and two gap guys, but you want somebody in theory like a DeForest Buckner, like a Eric Armstead. You want someone big, tall, long arms, can just engulf. You want a grizzly bear. And I'm not really sure what DJ Jones qualified as, but he was no grizzly. He's short and he's stubby, and he was a one gap player, and he was excellent at that when he had that burst off the line, that great broad jump, all that stuff. But he lost that somewhere in Denver. Maybe he can get it back. Maybe that's somebody that the Niners, when the Broncos cut him, can bring in on another just cheap 1-year deal, get back your juice, go out and make some more money after that. Wouldn't have any problem with that. But I don't think he solves the problem that the 49ers have, which is they don't have a run stopper in the middle of the line. Not that they did with Eric Armstead, but at least he was passable. At least in theory, he could be that guy. He looked the part. He just wasn't on the field enough, and it's a whole thing. Daquan Jones, DJ Reader. How about a Grover Stewart? Colts defensive tackle, free agent. Did a little suspension for steroids last year. I got no problem with that. It's the NFL. You're not doing a little bit of steroids, you're probably getting left behind. So Grover Stewart, you want to talk about a grizzly bear in the middle of the line. There's your grizzly bear. Mo Hurst is an option. He's been with the Niners before. He was fine for Cleveland last year. Better than he was with the Niners. I'm not sure Mo Hurst is somebody you want to invest a lot of money in. I'm not sure you can afford to even get a guy like DJ Reader or Grover Stewart. I don't know what the market is like for defensive tackles right now. If we just go with, Bilal Nichols, he just got 3 years, $21 million from the Cardinals. Bilal Nichols, are we talking about anything impressive or special here? But Bilal Nichols, not really. So this is, I think, priority number one now is improving the defensive line. And the issue with that is that a lot of the guys who are in that second tier, which is where I think the Niners are going to have to do their shopping, if they're even capable of shopping, they're going. Like a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel, defensive end, would have been a wonderful option for the Niners at opposite of Nick Bosa, because he'll set an edge for you. He'll give you a little burst off the line, but he'll just be solid. You could just count on him for 2 downs, and then you can bring in a kid or bring in somebody who's just a third down kind of player, pass down kind of player. But Andrew Van Ginkel would have given you solidity on the outside, if that's a word, and, he's gone. Yeah, the Vikings are signing a lot of players today, mainly because they have a lot of money to do it because Kirk Cousins is an Atlanta Falcon now. But Andrew Van Ginkel, 2 years, $20 million, 14 guaranteed from the Vikings, according to Schefter. That would have been a good option for the 49ers. Let's just keep going down the list. I know the big names are Saquon Barkley, 3 years with the Eagles. That's great. Saquon Barkley is a really fun, interesting, good player. I'm not sure it changes the fact that Nick Sirianni's the head coach of the Eagles, so that's going to be their problem. By the way, the Eagles paid $20 million to a guard today. I think Landon Dickerson is the best guard in the NFL. I'm not sure any guard's worth $20 million. Jonah Jackson at guard, which is another spot that I think a lot of people would fairly thought, hey, maybe the 49ers throw a little money that way. Not that they can throw it to all these places either. This is a point that needs to be made. If you want to throw some money at guard, okay, well, then you have to make a sacrifice somewhere else. Maybe then you stick with Ambry Thomas as your number 2. Maybe you're hoping for a Darrell Luter to step up as a number 2 corner. Like, now you can't add to the secondary, because if you want to go on the lines, you can probably do 2 spots, but you can't do 3 and you can't do 4. You have 11 draft picks, maybe 12. I don't know. It's hard to say. Got a shit ton of draft picks. You can do something there, but are those guys going to be capable of playing a role in year 1? Probably not. If you're a top 100 pick, you should be. If you're a first-round pick, you need to be a starter day 1. Top 100 pick, you need to have a role, like a solid, okay, you're a third down guy, or you're in a tackle rotation, whatever. You have to have a role if you're a top 100 pick. But if you're a day 3 pick, this is just firing darts and hoping you hit something. The guys that I like on day 3 are the guys who are athletic marvels who never showed it on tape in college, or are the guys who showed it on tape in college and make no sense. So like a Jawan Jennings is a great example of a guy who his spark scores and relative athletic scores, they sucked. And then you watch him and you go, this guy rules. And then sure enough, in the NFL, he rules. Like there's guys like that. Those are the day 3 picks. A guy like George Kittle is the best example. You look at George Kittle in college, he had like 20 catches. Now, Iowa, this and that, but it doesn't matter. The market's the market. But then he goes and he tests off the absolute charts athletically, and you say, well, there's something there. He didn't put it together in college. Maybe he'll never put it together. Maybe he's not a very good football player. Well, it turns out he was. And so these are the kind of dart throws that you need to make on day 3. You can't build a team that's going to win the Super Bowl counting on day 3 dart throws. You just can't. As much fun as that is for me, as much as that's my favorite part, perhaps of the entire NFL, is day 3 NFL draft dart throws. That is not a way to build a team when you have a Super Bowl window that's wide open for, I believe, the next 2 years, and certainly should be open for next year. But again, they need to get some work done here. And they can't patch all the holes in the wall with the money that they do have, which is more significant than most people let on. The salary cap is generally fake, but there are limits to even the most fugazi of numbers. You gotta get some tight ends in here. Charlie Warner's out. Charlie Warner should always be a third tight end. I think he's a fine player. I wouldn't pay him $4 million a year. I just wouldn't. I think you can replace Charlie Warner on the cheap. So that's great. Now you need a third tight end and a second tight end. And by the way, that second tight end should probably be somebody who can actually fill in as a number 1 tight end in the offense that you truly run, because they haven't been able to do that for several years with Ross Dwelly, who's just a slot receiver. A pretty good receiver, not that he can separate or anything, but great hands. But now you don't have a number 2. Now you don't have a number 3. So now you're going to have to definitely draft somebody to at least be the number 3. Maybe you have to go sign somebody as the number 2. I haven't even looked at tight end stuff yet because I thought Warner was coming back. I didn't think there'd be a market for him. I was wrong. Robert Hunt is a name, guard. Robert Hunt was a name that was thrown around a little bit as it pertained to the 49ers. He's gone. Panthers signed him 5 years, $100 million. Jesus Christ. They just $20 million guards, baby. Why not? I think Kyle might be onto something with not paying guards. Just throwing that out there. As much as I love the guard position, as much fun as I have breaking down offensive linemen and watching these guys pull and pin and all, $20 million. You're paying Pro Bowl, not all pro. You're paying Pro Bowl wide receiver money to guards. Got to question your team building there, Carolina Panthers, which probably shouldn't be the first time. But it's a name that you can cross off the list for the 49ers. I mean, I'm fascinated to see what they do. They got to do something. And I think if you're going to prioritize anything, it's now defensive tackle. And it probably should have been very high on the list before they cut Eric Armstead. I think it's definitely high on, well, it's number 1 on my list now. And with the way that this market is going, which should be expected, by the way, not $20 million guards. That's preposterous. But I mean, hell, Robert Hunt might get paid more than Klay Thompson next year. But it's so reminiscent of the 2016 NBA free agency. Second Kevin Durant reference here. Hello. Everybody got a big boost, right? TV money went up in the NBA. Chris Paul and LeBron James, in their infinite wisdom, decided that they didn't want to smooth over the salary cap, which is to take the big bump and smooth it out over a couple of years, give every team $8 extra million over the next 4 years, as opposed to just taking in one big fell swoop. They had their contracts coming up for the 2016 season. They wanted their big payday. So much for the rank and file of the NBPA. That allowed every team in the league to get one max player in free agency, unless you were totally screwed with the cap, which some teams were. But I think it was like 20 of the 30 teams could have signed a max player with the salary cap bump that year. Well, the NFL just sort of did the same thing. Now, the Warriors got Durant that season. That's the only reason it was possible. They made some trades, obviously, to finagle it and Bogut and Barnes and all that. Remember when people said that there was only one ball and that would be a problem? Good job. Same thing's happening with the NFL this season. Thank you to Taylor Swift and all the Swifties for a nice big boost in TV ratings and a nice big boost in the salary cap. Throughout the season, I was fascinated by this number because the 49ers are obviously a team that spent a lot of money. They were going to be up against the cap. They had changed their temperament towards the cap pretty significantly in the last couple of years. Early in Shanahan and John Lynch's tenure, I mean, Parag is the guy who runs the cap. Parag Marath. He's the guy who is the cap guru. He's Jed's right-hand man. I don't know if he's still doing that anymore, by the way. I need to check up on that. Regardless, they were hell-bent on being cap compliant. They believed that the NFL salary cap was real, and they were not interested in pushing its limits any way, shape, or form. Then they get a little taste of that Super Bowl, and they go, hey, we should be pushing the limits of the salary cap a little bit. Now, you had a quarterback that was making $27 million in Jimmy Garoppolo. You had taken a first-round quarterback in Trey Lance. You had a lot of things. But the mentality changed even when those guys were gone, because now you had this incredible window of opportunity with Brock Purdy, who they believed going into this season, and he proved it, is the guy. Purdy's making 0.5% of the 49ers salary cap. If you can't maximize this window, it's going to get a shit ton harder on the back end when you actually got to pay your quarterback. The best thing that you can have in the NFL is a true bona fide kick-ass number one with a bullet quarterback. We're talking, I mean, I don't even know if Josh Allen qualifies. We're talking Patrick Mahomes, right? If you have that guy, if you have the Jordan of football, then yeah, do whatever the hell you want around him. He'll make it work, as we saw. If you have a just ripping quarterback, it's the best thing you can have in the league. It's a head coach in a quarterback league, and, you know, a couple teams have that guy. And every year that list changes a little bit, but there's one dude, he wears 15 in red, and he's always at the top. Maybe Joe Burrow's that guy. Regardless, you know what I'm talking about. That's the best thing you can have. Franchise, Hall of Fame, MVP, Super Bowl winning quarterback. Okay. Second best thing you can have? High quality quarterback on a rookie contract. Second best thing you can have. Because otherwise you end up in a situation like the Denver Broncos last year. Or, I mean, shit, just go down the list. Even the Rams, who have handled their salary cap at an elite level. All credit in the world to the LA Rams. But they had to eat it last year. They had to look at their salary, their books, and be like, we're paying Matt Stafford how much? We're paying Aaron Donald how much? We're going to have to eat something here. We're going to have a year. And last year they put out a defense that was like all day 2 and day 3 draft picks. Because they pawned off anybody that they could, and they said, we just got to eat it for a year. We got to eat. And they still made the playoffs, which, again, you have a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Best thing to have. 49ers can't take advantage of this window. Man, I don't know. I don't know how it goes from here, because They're having a hard time, as it seems, where their quarterback is making a rounding error. I mean, Brock Purdy's barely above the 51-man salary cap threshold. What happens when you got to pay him $30, $40 million a year? What happens if Brock Purdy turns out to be a very shrewd negotiator, turns out to be the Kirk Cousins that Kyle Shanahan believes him to be, but also off the field and just gets money, it just pushes for the maximum contract? Say what you will about Kirk Cousins as a quarterback. I think you could do a lot worse, and I know you can do a hell of a lot better. But my man got paid consistently throughout his career. No one has played the contract game better than Kirk Cousins. He just got a 4-year deal from Atlanta. Nobody has done better than him. Maybe Brock Purdy's the exact same way. Mr. Irrelevant, pay my ass. MVP candidate, baby. Cough it up. He might be that way, man. He thinks very highly of himself. As well he should. He's an excellent quarterback. But if the 49ers can't find a way to bring in enough defensive talent to just hold the line with what they had last year, and right now it is a big, legitimate concern. Again, I'll read it off one more time. Defensive end, depth chart. Nick Bosa, awesome. Great player. Fantastic. Drake Jackson, Alex Barrett, Raymond Johnson III. I mean, I would like Raymond Johnson II, but Raymond Johnson III is okay. Robert Beal, who I like. Austin Bryant, he's fine. I wouldn't play him in an NFL game, much less big games, but here we go. And Sam Okunwahu, who I don't know who he is. Sorry. I'm sure somebody does. I don't. Defensive tackle, Javon Hargrave, Kalia Davis, T.Y. McGill, Ernest Brown, and Spencer Wagee. This is not a Super Bowl caliber team if you have that kind of line. And again, a lot of the top targets are going bye-bye. Let's talk about the defensive ends for a second, because the market is just getting saturated. This was the point I was trying to make before I went off on 40 million tangents. I'll get better at that, I promise. Probably won't. It's been like 10 years. I've never gotten better at that. Regardless, inflation off the charts in the NFL right now because everybody's got money to spend. And that means you're getting $20 million guards because, well, you only have this year to spend it. And I was fascinated to see where this salary cap number went out. Folks that I talked to who I really trust with other teams, they kept giving me a little, little bits and pieces throughout the year. They go, hey, it might be 240 and then might be 245. And then I got to the Super Bowl and they're like, shit, man, it might be 250. And then it was 255. Thank you, Taylor Swift. So the Niners do have money to spend, but they got to spend it in a lot of places. And they got to start with defensive tackle. They got to add defensive ends. They got to get 2 tight ends. And whether that be in the draft or in free agency, it's got to happen. I mean, let's be clear about this. The Niners have to sign defensive tackles and defensive ends. They have to sign some. You cannot fulfill your mandate by drafting guys. Not at these positions, not at starter roles. You have 1 first-round pick. It is a crapshoot because it's the NFL draft. You have 1 first-round pick, and you need to get a starter at defensive end, and you need to get a starter at defensive tackle. You're not getting 2 first-round picks. You have 1. And by the way, I don't know if that's a good way of going about your business, putting in a rookie in there. So you got to sign somebody. Defensive end targets. Danielle Hunter's the big one. Everyone wants Danielle Hunter. I don't think they can afford Danielle Hunter anymore. I don't know if they ever could, but with their so many needs around the board, I don't think it is prudent for them to sign Danielle Hunter to what would probably be a 4-year, close to $100 million contract. Is that the best usage of their money? Which they have some, but they don't have unlimited. Is Danielle Hunter going to change it? I think he'd be a big impact player, but I would just run it up the middle. If you got Danielle Hunter, now you don't have a starting defensive tackle, or you're drafting a starting defensive tackle, which there are some options, but I don't like that option for the 49ers going with Danielle Hunter. As fun as that would be, I don't think it's in the cards. Van Ginkel's off the board. I got a couple of names. I mean, Chase Young is an option. If Chase Young wants to take a discount, Chase Young wants to stick around, call it a pillow contract, Scott Boras. Chase Young wants to stick around for $7-8 million. You stick with Chase Young. I think Cleve Farrell has to be re-signed. And he was your starting defensive end. He can set an edge. He's solid. He's positive. Take him off the field in pass rushing downs if you need to. I think Cleve Farrell has to stay. Has to stay. I don't think there'll be a big market for him. I think the 49ers can get away with that one, but I think he has to stay. Bryce Huff's off the board. Andrew Van Ginkel's off the board. Van Ginkel would have been awesome. He's a $10 million player, though. Great edge setter. Gives you a little burst. I thought Van Ginkel would have been great for them. An upgrade over Farrell. And then maybe you don't bring back, regardless. He's gone. He's not an option for them anymore. So here, I'll give you three names. Josh Uche from the Patriots. He was a pass rush specialist. They just bring him in on third downs. He kind of reminds me of Hassan Reddick. I think he'd be a good option there. You get Farrell and Uche. I can see that working in the 49ers wide nine system. How about Derek Barnett, who I think has been a really solid player for the Eagles? I think he played for the Texans. I think Derek Barnett, he's a high motor guy. I think he's a solid player. I think you can get him on the cheap. I think Derek Barnett's somebody that you have on the roster and you hope it works out. Because it might not. His best football might be behind him. It probably is behind him. But you put him in this one gap and go system. I think Derek Barnett stands a chance of being a guy, especially for this team, which really needs a guy. It needs like five guys. Anthony Jennings. You might remember Anthony Jennings. He was a linebacker. I think he played it wasn't star, like the jack linebacker position for the Patriots. I like him a lot. I before I jumped on here, I liked Anthony Jennings a lot. Now, he played jack at New England last year, and that's just stand-up linebacker. I mean, 3-4, but it's really kind of a 4-3. I mean, I think he can put his hand in the ground just fine and get after it. I don't even give a damn if he stands up. Who cares? I think he's really solid against the run, and I think he can get after it against the pass. I really like Anthony Jennings, and you just hope that inflation doesn't hit everybody. You hope that everybody kind of blows their wad with spending $20 million on a guard, and now it leaves, you got this great upper class of free agents, but it leaves kind of no middle class, because a guy like Jennings or Uche or Barnett, I think, would be a really good middle class. Let's go over the DT targets one more time. Daquan Jones. I think he needs a pillow contract. I think the 49ers should provide him that pillow. DJ Reader might be too expensive at this juncture. Maybe not, but he's a run stopper of the highest order. Grover Stewart, Grizzly Bear in the middle. Love him. And I guess you need somebody, you can go with Mo Hurst. Let's go over some of the, let me just run through here. I mean, Charlie Warner, 3 years, $12 million. Jesus Christ. Inflation's out of control. Thanks, Joe Biden. I'm a joke guy, but come on. Easy joke. Andrew Van Ginkel to the Vikings. That's brutal. John Runyon got $10 million with the Giants. Another guard getting paid. Saquon, 3 years, $37.75 million, up to 46. Eagles are going to do some flash. Eagles are going to pretend that they have substance. I am out 100% on the Eagles until they fire Nick Sirianni. Kind of in on the Falcons, though. Kirk Cousins is there, 4-year deal. We don't have any money. I haven't seen a financial figure yet on Cousins. I presume it is prodigious. Jonah Jackson going to the Rams, I think, is a big deal. Jonah Jackson was a great player for the Lions this past year. Guard. Year of the guard. 3 years, $51 million for Jonah Jackson. I thought that would have been a really positive upgrade for the 49ers at one of their two guard spots, if that's where they decided to go. Again, I think they made the right decision not going that direction, given the cost, given the need on defensive tackle and defensive end. But regardless, Jonah Jackson would have been, he would have locked down. You put Jonah Jackson at left or right guard. Absolutely lock it down. He's going to either help out McKivitz on the right side, or your left side is as dominant as any in the NFL. The Lions really missed him late in the season last year with some injuries, and I think that was a big issue. And of course, the Rams, who I think are just doing it as well as anybody right now. They clearly draft exceptionally well, and I think they're handling their salary cap issues it's their fault. But I think they did a really nice job here with Jonah Jackson coming in. They really needed to improve their offensive line. Gabe Davis, that doesn't really apply. Okay, so like Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle. I'm not a big Christian Wilkins guy, played for the Dolphins. I think a lot of people think that Christian Wilkins is better than he actually is. That's a personal preference. We can disagree. It doesn't matter. Christian Wilkins got 4 years, $110 million from the almost said Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, that's a lot of money. A lot of money. 4 years, $110 million for Christian Wilkins. I mean, the Niners might not be able to get Reader, might not be able to get Stewart if that's how the market is set at DT. Try to see if there's anybody else here before we bounce off. I'll be doing a stream with Jake Hutchinson at 2:30 49ers game day. You should subscribe to that. I'm just going through the ESPN list here. Vikings are doing a lot of work. They need to. They should probably get a quarterback. Yeah, so Jonathan Greenard, 4 years, $72 million with the Vikings. I'm not a big Jonathan Greenard guy. That's a lot of money. A lot of people are going to say this. What about David Bakhtiari? Just hasn't played enough. If Dave Bakhtiari wants to come and play for the 49ers on the cheap, hell yeah. Could never have enough depth on the offensive line. But he's not going to be a swing guard, right? He's not going to provide that 6 offensive lineman versatility that you really need on game day. Like, I just don't see David Bakhtiari as a real option. You just re-signed Colton McKivitz. Now, maybe that was a mistake with Bakhtiari available. The fact of the matter is, I don't know how many games Bakhtiari has played. This is a hell of a name to spell here, Kurtenbach. So maybe I don't. I mean, I just click on this link here. David Bakhtiari has played flipping offensive line. They don't even give you the stats on ESPN. Of course they don't. Offensive line bias, anti-offensive line bias. I don't think Bakhtiari has the kind of health record that you need if you're going to sign him. Now, if Colton McKivitz goes down and you need to bring in somebody for half a season, maybe Bakhtiari is still on the streets then. I think it's actually a pretty viable option that he's still on the streets then. Then you bring him in and pay him what you need to pay him, and you're good to go. But in terms of bringing him in before training camp, I really question that move because he is strictly a tackle. Frankly, strictly a left tackle. You don't need any help there. And the way that you have to build an offensive line, you need a swing tackle who can give you some guard play in a pinch, maybe even play center. I just don't see a guy like Bakhtiari fitting in with where the Niners are now that McKivitz is locked up to another contract extension. Tony Pollard goes to the Titans. Don't know what that's about. Oh, let's talk about the Niners. How about this? I thought that Mac Jones would have been an awesome move for the 49ers if they were to trade what turned out to be a 6th-round pick to Jacksonville, from Jacksonville to the Patriots for Mac Jones, because Mac Jones, after the trade, he was going to cost like $2 million. I thought that would have been a great move for a 49ers team that should know as well as anybody you need to be loaded in your quarterback room. And Brandon Allen, I thought, was probably overqualified to be a number 3. Probably underqualified to be a top-level number 2. Kind of a guy who's stuck there in the middle, right? Well, he's going to be the number 2 next year for all intents and purposes. Maybe they draft a quarterback on day 3. I'm of the mindset that every team should draft a quarterback on day 3 every year and just take a swing. Why the hell not? Most important position in the game. Maybe you get Brock Purdy. Maybe you get Trey Lance. You find out. You find out in camp. If anyone knew what the hell they were doing with quarterback evaluations, I would say maybe don't do that, but clearly no one does. So always just spin the roulette wheel, take a day 3 quarterback every year, no matter what. So I think the Niners will end up doing that, which is great because I want to look at some day 3 quarterbacks during my film sessions. Regardless, Brandon Allen re-signs 1-year deal. He was the number 3 quarterback last year behind Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold might end up being the quarterback of the Vikings. There was a lot of buzz about that before the combine, seeing as the Falcons were kind of in on Kirk Cousins. So, they just slide Brandon Allen up a spot. You could do better. You could do worse. You could do better. You could do worse. I'm not thrilled with it. I thought Mac Jones would have been a perfect use of one of those just extra draft picks that you have, because the Niners can't really use all of them. They got 11 picks, I think 10 maybe. Changes every time. They have all these picks. They can't use all of them. Yeah, you're going to consolidate a couple of them, throw them in there, and maybe move up a spot or 2. But I like using draft picks to go get actual NFL players, guys that you know can do something. And you might say, oh, man, you know who sucks? Mac Jones. He sucks. What a dopey face. And he sucks. He didn't suck 2 years ago. You know what really sucked? The Patriots offense last year. I mean, it wasn't being run by anybody who knew what the hell they were doing. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal. And I'm not saying Mac Jones is some future all-pro or anything. I think he's probably a backup quarterback in the NFL. And you know Kyle had some affinity for him before the 2021 draft, which, by the way, looks just better by the day. I mean, is Trevor Lawrence even good? I don't know. Better than the rest of them. Mac Jones for a 6th-round pick, almost no money on the books, that would have been a really, really good use of a 6th, 5th-round pick that you probably aren't going to use, for anything worthwhile anyway. And now you have Brock Purdy as your starter, Mac Jones, who everyone wants to say, oh, you've been a bad locker room guy. No, he wouldn't have. Now, we're both speaking in absolutes like Sith Lords here, but no, he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have been a bad locker room guy because he needed that job. He needs to get his mojo back. He needs to get, in the case of the 49ers, a little Shanahan magic pixie dust on him. Just like did Sam Darnold do anything in the past year to show that he deserves to be a starting quarterback in this league again? No. He just got the Kyle Shanahan kiss of approval. A little stamp right there for you, pup. And now he might be a starting quarterback in the league again, despite the fact that he's been to 2 places and sucked as a starting quarterback. But Kyle Shanahan said, good guy, positive guy. You don't think that the same would have worked for Mac Jones? I thought that would have really worked out well for the 49ers, would have worked out well for Mac Jones, and clearly the New England Patriots didn't want anything for him. I think that was a missed opportunity right there. And you're going with Brandon Allen. Let's just be blunt about the scenario. The last 2 years, we've set records for most quarterbacks who have started a game and probably played, but definitely started. If Brock Purdy goes down, the scenario that so many people wanted to see last year because of the Sam Darnold of it all, if Brock Purdy goes down, do you trust that Brandon Allen can keep this team's head above water? Maybe he can. I don't know. I don't trust that he can, because I've seen him play in the league before. I think he's won 1 game as a starter. I think he's fine. I think he is a really good backup for a team that knows, to steal Tom Moore's old line, if 18 goes down, we're fucked, which is what he said when John Gruden once asked him. Ron Jaworski and John Gruden were at a Colts practice before a Monday Night Football game when they were both doing Monday Night Football. And they went up to legendary Colts offensive coordinator Tom Moore, and they said, hey, you guys don't seem to run any snaps with your backup quarterbacks. It's super weird. Why is Peyton Manning the only quarterback taking snaps? And Tom Moore turns to these gentlemen and says, gentlemen, it's because if 18 goes down, we're fucked. And we don't practice fucked. Okay. If you have Brandon Allen as your backup quarterback because you got 18 or 15 or 9 or whatever, then that makes all the sense in the world. The second that guy goes down, you're screwed anyway. Doesn't matter. Throw in somebody who's a solid locker room guy, positive influence. Everyone's going to like him. Maybe you can steal a game or 2. But honestly, the season's over anyway. Or you're going to lose all these games without your top quarterback. So why the hell spend any real money on a backup? By the way, those quarterbacks cost a lot of money too, which means that you got to make sacrifices in some place. Good place to start is backup quarterback. Because again, we don't practice fucked. I don't think the 49ers are in that spot. In fact, you look at how Sam Darnold's situation played out last year, they're clearly not in that spot. You can spend a little bit of money on a backup quarterback. You can spend a little bit of money to make sure that you have a loaded quarterback room. And no one's wishing harm on Brock Purdy or saying, hey, Brock Purdy is going to go down, this and that. I'm just saying every other team in the NFL has found out what the 49ers have found out in the NFC Championship game and the game against Miami and the game against the Bears before that 2 years ago, which is you better have a ton of quarterbacks on your roster because these dudes are going down. They're like starting pitchers in baseball. You just can't trust them to stay out there anymore. Not with the way defensive ends are coming at you. Not with the way offensive lines play in this league. It's a death sentence to be a quarterback, even with all the rule changes. So you better have a good backup. And the 49ers are paying $1 million to their starting quarterback. They can afford, even with all the holes they have on the roster, to get a better number 2. So heaven forbid Brock Purdy does go down. You're not standing in the wilderness saying, well, season's over. which is honestly what I think would happen if Brock Purdy does twist an ankle, sprain a knee, get a concussion, go down the list. Not wishing this into existence, not trying to speak it into existence. Don't want anyone to get injured. I mean, even Seahawks don't want them to get injured. But like, Brandon Allen is your number 2 quarterback. Makes sense if you're paying your quarterback $50 million. You got to make a sacrifice somewhere. When you're paying him $1 million, you should have the best backup quarterback in the goddamn NFL. And all signs point to that not being the case for the 49ers, because every bit of language that I've seen on the reporting, and I can speak firsthand, like they're talking about him as the number 2. Now, listen, they said the same thing about Nate Sudfeld. Then they paid him $2 million to go away a couple of years ago. So they might just be really good at lying. They are actually pretty good at lying. At the same time, it does feel to me as if with all these other needs, they just did a kind of typical Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch thing, which is, let's just take care of this. Just take care of it. I don't want to worry about quarterback. Let's just take care of it and let's move on to something else. And of all the issues, yes, defensive tackle is one, defensive end is one, cornerback, tight end, even adding offensive line depth is one, getting Brandon Ayuk re-signed is one. Like, they got issues. They got things that they got to work on. I would have liked to have seen more attention paid to the backup quarterback job, given that they clearly know the value. They clearly know the value of having a loaded quarterback room because of the way they built it up last year. Brandon Allen might have been the best 3 in the league last year. I don't like him as a 2. I like him as a 3. Now, maybe he doesn't like being a 3. That's fine. Bring in a Nick Mullins. Maybe we can have a different conversation. And maybe draft a guy on day 3 that we'll all pretend is really good and then never really see him. There's a lot of stuff that can happen there. But the Mac Jones opportunity, something in the back of my head says they're really going to rue that. They're really going to rue that. All right, just because we're at our peak of viewers, we should probably end now because I'm an actual social media idiot. Thanks for joining. We're going to do this a bunch. I don't know if the title will actually be applicable, Daily Dieter, because like I got shit to do. I got to write. I got to do a live stream at 2:30. I got KMBR tomorrow night. I got to pick up my kid at daycare, get the dog groomed, and then watch a Warriors game. Like we're all living lives, baby. I got stuff to do. So I don't know if I'll be able to do this every day. I'm certainly not going to go an hour 8 extemporaneously every day, but we're going to give this thing another go. Appreciate everyone who joined in. I'll get the links to the podcast if you don't want to watch my ugly mug. Heaven forbid you missed that. And we'll keep you updated. Jake and I are going to 2:30 on the 49ers game day page. Check that out. I'll stream it here on this channel as well. And it will be on X or I don't know, whatever the Nazis use today. But yeah, thanks for joining everybody. We'll talk in like a couple hours.